Chapter 17, Contract High. "Would you like to have your lawyer look over the contract?" Daniel asks me as he leans back in his errand chair and puts his Converse-encased feet on his desk. We're sitting in his understated and elegant penthouse corner office on Sunset, which is filled with books on media and politics, most of them presumably written by Daniel's good friends. The fact that he's wearing an adorable striped Armani suit with Converse sneakers is doing nothing to dampen his overall cuteness. Still, now that he's minutes away from becoming my boss, something in me has switched off. I'm not massively crushed out on him anymore. I'm flattered that Daniel thinks I'm savvy and important enough to even have a lawyer, but seeing as I don't even have a dentist and I already know I'd happily sign on the dotted line no matter what the contract says, I simply shake my head and motion for him to hand me a pen. Publisher John walks in. "Can I be among the first to congratulate chat's first and only party girl?" he asks as he gives me a hug. "John, I can't thank you guys enough for this opportunity," I say. Daniel had told me that while hiring me had been his idea, John had backed him up immediately. "No need to thank me," John says. "I hope I'm going to be the one thanking you when you become world famous." Even though this entire situation should make me feel an unbelievable amount of pressure, I am, for some reason, completely calm. It could be that I'm sober 35 days, but I seem to have complete faith in my ability to pull off this column. The fact that I can't imagine getting up to very many crazy adventures in this new life of mine seems secondary to the fact that they're going to be paying me $5,000 a month to write essentially off the top of my head. No reporting, no transcribing. John starts talking about how the timing is perfect for me to become a sensation through this, and how I'll wipe Candace Bushnell and Helen Fielding off the map. While listening, I weigh whether or not I should tell them that since I've been out of rehab, all I've done is meet Justin and Rachel for coffee and cigarettes and go to meetings back at Pledges. I keep my mouth shut, reminding myself that Daniel has made it abundantly clear that he's fine with me dipping into my past for material. "So long as it's true, I don't care whether it happened last night or last year," were in fact his exact words. After I sign my contract and tell Daniel that I'll be turning in copy to him by the end of the week, I feel undeniably like Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City, minus the Manolos' adorable apartment and 3 sex-crazed best friends, not to mention the Cosmopolitans. "So there's something I think I need to tell you," Justin says, over double-shot lattes and Camel Lights. We're sitting at Starbucks, and each of us is preparing to meet pre-sobriety friends for the first time since being out of rehab. I'm going to be meeting Stephanie, and Justin is planning to have dinner with his old roommate, Jason. We're doing what Rachel calls bookending. That is, getting together before something challenging and then planning to talk afterward. I feel strangely calm about seeing Stephanie again, but Justin is completely freaking out about seeing Jason. He talked about Jason a lot in rehab, usually about how much Jason hated it when he got high and about how they seemed to always fight. Even though he's now living with a bunch of guys from Pledges, he's planning to talk to Jason about the possibility of moving back in with him today. "What do you need to tell me?" I ask, dipping a finger in my latte to do a temperature test. "Ouch," I say, licking the hot liquid off my finger. Justin looks more uncomfortable than I've ever seen him. "What is it?" I'm immediately in a panic, positive that he's going to confess that he's been sneaking out of his sober living house to smoke crystal meth. "Did you go out?" "Dear God, take that back," Justin says, shaking his head. "Then what is it?" I ask. "Whatever it is, it can't be that bad. Remember what Tommy used to say, there are no big deals?" Justin nods and looks down. "Jason wasn't just my roommate," he says. And before he utters another word, I know exactly what his big confession is going to be, and something inside of me isn't all that surprised. I should have known. Whenever Justin talked about people he dated, he'd say, "this person," and never "he" or "she." And of course, it was kind of weird for a 35-year-old to still have a roommate, let alone one he was always brawling with. Even though when we first met, I fantasized that our friendship would one day morph into true love, something in me had abandoned that concept long ago. Probably a sixth sense that he wasn't exactly oriented that way. "I know," I say. "You do?" he asks, looking immensely relieved. "How?" I smile. "Justin, I live in West Hollywood and grew up outside San Francisco. As far as I'm concerned, breeders are the minority." Justin laughs. "I know, it does sometimes seem that way," he says. "And I'm not ashamed of it. Or maybe I am, I don't know. Jason thinks I am." But I think it's that I have a kind of deep voice and don't wear super tight clothes, and so people assume I'm straight. He shakes his head. Straight people will say, "Wow, you look so straight," like that's a compliment. I get it, I say. When people find out I'm Jewish, they say, "You're Jewish, but you're pretty." I'm never sure if I'm supposed to thank them or tell them to F off. Justin laughs again, then says, "Well, I'm glad I could tell you this." I grin at him. Me too. He takes a sip of his latte and licks foam off his upper lip. "And I want you to know that if I were ever going to be with a woman, it would be you. And if I were ever going to be with a gay man, I want you to know that it would be you." "Shut up," he exclaims, tossing a napkin at me. "I'm being serious." "So am I say, tossing the napkin back. "Seriously deranged," he says. And then we both start laughing like we've just inhaled entire tanks of nitrous oxide. The phrase "high on life" floats through my mind, and I want to share it with Justin, but I'm laughing too hard to get the words out. Stephanie and I meet right before sunset at the bottom of Runyon Canyon. She's the one who had suggested hiking, something the old me would have avoided at all costs. But I've realized that there are so many things in LA and the world that I haven't experienced or even been aware of because they seem boring compared to meeting someone for drinks. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen here. If Stephanie wants to talk about my making out with Gus or just proceed as if nothing happened. But I feel clear about the fact that I want to apologize either way. With some sobriety under my belt, I see how truly out of control my behavior was. It didn't start and end with making out with Gus the night of the party either. I'm starting to see how much I've always felt entitled to whatever I've thought I wanted, and how few boundaries I've had with friends. But I'm also learning not to beat myself up for that. Rachel is always reminding me that alcoholics and addicts are naturally self-centered people, and that I haven't been bad but sick, and now I'm trying to get well. "Hey there," Stephanie says, giving me an awkward hug when I walk up to her at the Gardner entrance. "You look good." "You do too," I say, and mean it. I'd never really noticed how pretty she was before. We start walking in sync, our legs taking strides that are the exact same size. It reminds me of how women who spend a lot of time together get on the same menstrual cycle. Supposedly disgusting as it is because their bodies subconsciously smell each other and then adjust. It seems surprising that after so much time apart and so many changes, Stephanie and I should still be in the same groove in any way at all. "Stephanie, I want to apologize to you for being an asshole," I suddenly say. "Please, Amelia, I'm the one who wrote you that foul note. Why don't we just forget everything that happened and move on?" I stop walking. "In a second. But first, let me say that I'm sorry for always making everything about me. What I want to do, where I want to go, who I want to talk to when we're there. Kissing Gus that night was the ultimate selfish act, and I'm so sorry." Stephanie looks pleasantly surprised. "I miss you," she says, starting to head up the path again, with me a step behind. "It was hard not to call you. And then when I heard about what happened at work and you going to rehab and everything, I couldn't stop myself from calling." "I miss you too, Steph," I say. We stop walking, and I throw my arms around her. "I'm really sorry for the way I've acted," I say, feeling tears sting my eyes. She surrenders into my hug. "Me too. Can we be friends again?" I nod, and I know she can feel my nod because my head is cradled against her neck. After a few seconds, we disentangle, and I ask her about Jane and Molly. "Molly's good, but Jane is thoroughly immersed in the whole coke scene," Stephanie says, shaking her head. "We've completely lost touch." "That's sad," I say, and mean it. I hope Jane can find a place like Pledges, but I know that if she's like every other addict I've ever met, my calling and telling her about it would probably only piss her off. Stephanie and I continue up Runyon, and even though I did this walk once before, I was seriously hungover at the time and didn't notice you can see almost all of Los Angeles from the top. "God, this is stunning," I say. Stephanie nods but looks distracted. Then she blurts out, "By the way, I've cut back a lot on drinking myself." I nod. I'd kind of expected her to say something about her own drinking habits, assuming I'd be judging them now. "Please don't think I'm going to be some anti-drinking cop," I say. "The way I look at it, I'm the one who lost the privilege to do that stuff, not anyone else." I've thought a lot about this because when I first got to rehab, I couldn't stop declaring every person I thought about a complete and utter alcoholic. But I've come to learn that alcoholism and addiction is a self-diagnosed disease, and that it doesn't have much to do with how much someone drinks. An alcoholic personality is one where the person always wants to be the center of attention, but still has low self-esteem. The proverbial piece of crap in the center of the universe. An alcoholic is someone who can't handle their feelings and whose life is unmanageable as a result of drinking and using. For however much Stephanie and I used to party together, I'm the one with that personality, not her. I learned at Pledges that there's a big difference between alcoholics and heavy drinkers. We continue to walk, and then Stephanie stops suddenly. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you, I got promoted to managing editor. Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so accustomed to taking other people's success as a personal affront that it feels foreign to be genuinely happy for someone. Congratulations. It's crazy. The less I care, the more they reward me, she says. I'm the very definition of failing up. It occurs to me then that Stephanie maybe isn't as unambitious as she pretends to be, and that perhaps she acts self-deprecating around me because she knows I compare myself to everyone and will thus feel bad. That's ridiculous, I say. You're about 20 times smarter than anyone you come into contact with, so you don't even have to try to succeed. That's why you're always getting promoted. Stephanie smiles, but looks at me somewhat quizzically. Okay, who are you and what have you done with Amelia? She asks, and we both laugh. Hey, congratulations, I hear, as I walk back to my folding chair. It's an hour after my walk with Stephanie, and I've just taken a 60 days sober chip at Pledges. It's quite an accomplishment. As other people take their chips, I glance at the person talking and realize I'm staring into the face of Damian McHugh, the boy next door sitcom star with a drinking problem that's gotten more ink than his career. He'd been going through his very public battle with the bottle, throwing up in bars, getting busted with hookers, while I'd been an impatient at Pledges. In rehab, we'd all jokingly talked about saving a seat for him there, but I hadn't expected him to simply show up one day to shake my hand for getting a chip. I'm Damian, he says, holding out his hand. I'm about to say I know before remembering the unwritten LA law thou shalt not acknowledge recognizing a celebrity. I'm Amelia. I smile and shake, but he doesn't let go of my hand. Nice to meet you, I add, before walking over to my seat. When the meeting ends and people begin their rush outside in order to get as much nicotine as possible into their systems as soon as humanly possible, Damian approaches me. Want to go smoke? He asks. I nod and follow him outside as I marvel at how surreal my life has become. Writing about celebrities going to rehab one month and smoking cigarettes with them at one the next. Damian walks past the clusters of people smoking right outside the meeting doors and toward the basketball hoop, lighting a cigarette and holding the lighter out for me. You know how when some people get sober, they start glowing and shit? He says suddenly. You really seem to have that. Thanks, I respond, taken aback. Is this a special sober pickup line, I wonder? Deciding that if it's not, it should be. It seems like the polite thing would be to tell him that he's glowing too, but it would be an outright lie, and outright lies aren't escaping from my lips with much ease anymore. So did you just finish up the 30-day program, I ask? He nods. Yeah, at the Malibu Pledges, but I like the meetings better here. He stares at his cigarette as if it, and not me, asked the question. And? I ask, how'd you like treatment? He blows smoke rings. About as much as I figure I'd like open heart surgery, he says. I can't help but laugh. It's an appropriate analogy if you think about it, but I got the feeling Damian hadn't. Really, that much, I ask. If I needed the open heart surgery in order to survive, he adds, grimacing. I see, I conclude, miserable but necessary. Something like that, he says, eyeing me as he tosses his cigarette butt on the ground and smashes it out with his Nike Air Max encased foot. You? Actually, I say, I loved it. I feel like I've been given a whole new life. I know I sound like a walking cliche when I say things like this, but I don't know how else to explain how different everything has become. Really? Damian asks, looking at me skeptically. He gestures his head toward the meeting room. Don't you feel a little like all of this, I don't know, sort of cult-like? Like they're trying to brainwash us or something? I shrug. Of course I'd heard people say this kind of thing before, to the point where I pretty much had a standard response. I guess, I say, but my brain really needed some washing. I smiled to try to alleviate how annoying my response must sound to him. But at the same time, I realized that talking to this guy who's paid like $10,000 for every second he's on camera is about as stimulating as examining an ant farm and having the ants crawl up your arm. He smiles and takes a step closer to me. Say the word, and we could be naked in my pool in 10 minutes, he says. Stunned, I feel positive I must have misheard him. What? I ask. Say the word, and we could be in my pool in a heartbeat, he repeats, editing out the nude part. I realize that Damien has indeed asked me, a girl he met under 5 minutes ago whose name I feel certain he has not retained, to leave a recovery meeting on a Tuesday evening and go home with him. He seems to be under the assumption that his fame and the fact that he has a pool would be enough of a selling point. And I'm somewhat shocked to discover that for me it's not. Thanks, I say, but I'm going to have to pass. No one has to know, he says. I mean, don't you want to get out of here and away from all these people? He lights another cigarette. I look up and see Tommy walking over with Vera trailing behind. Then I glance back at Damien. You know, I really don't. I gesture toward one of the all-female smoking groups. But I'm sure you could find someone who would. Damien nods. Cool, he says, not looking even the slightest bit perturbed by my denial. He glances at the smoking girls and starts to walk toward them. Is this really how things work, I wonder, as I watch them all shake hands? When I see one of the girls nodding at him and smiling, I have to conclude that it is. Even in Culver City, we're still in Hollywood.